Hi students, and welcome to the third week in our second module on the Earth. The first week we learned about landforms, and the second week we learned about erosion and deposition and weathering. Now we're putting those two concepts together to see how weathering, erosion, and deposition shape the Earth's surface into those different landforms. At the bottom of the first slide are your guided notes. So it's really important that you guys take those because when the other science teachers get together, we make our study guide for you based off of those guided notes. So it's going to be important that you use them. And you can use them on quizzes and of course that module exam. So one of the largest ways that your textbook will focus on is erosion and deposition because of different forms of water. So here we're going to be looking at gullies, streams, and rivers. So gully is a groove in the land that carries runoff after a storm. And those gullies can join together to form streams. And then as streams form together, they're going to create rivers. So up here are our gullies. And then we'll have some streams once they get larger. And way out here is our river. We have meanders and oxbow lakes as well. So a meander can be created by a river, and they're just a loop-like bend in the river. So this is a meander. And then over time, if a river floods, it can create an oxbow lake. Finally, we have a delta. And a delta they're often triangle shapes, and as rivers flow into an ocean or a lake, the buildup forms a delta. So here is our triangle shape. This video is going to be able to show you more of the landforms that we saw on the last slide and talk you through them. It also highlights how runoff can be harmful for the environment. So when there's too much runoff, and runoff is the extra buildup of precipitation after a storm, they can do hurtful things to the environment, like have major floods. So there's different ways that we as humans try to reduce runoff in order to reduce erosion. So here are some different ways that we look at how runoff occurs and then how we can do our part in order to reduce it. Another way that water can shape Earth's surface is through waves. So sometimes it can be very devastating to an area. Right here are before and after photos of New Jersey after Hurricane Sandy. So as you can see, those waves took out homes and structures and vegetation. So in this instance, waves were not very helpful in shaping the Earth's surface. But down here, there may be some other better ways that the waves can form different types of landforms. First, waves will help make something called a spit. And then as time goes on, spits will build up into a sandbar. And finally, if those sandbars get large enough, we will end up with a barrier island or barrier beach, and that's what we have over here. Another way that water will shape the surface of the Earth is through glaciers, because ice is still water. The two major forms of glaciers are continental glaciers and valley glaciers. Continental glaciers, just like the name, cover most of a continent, and they can spread out over millions of square kilometers. So they're the larger of the two. In comparison, valley glaciers are constantly pulled downhill by gravity, and they're much smaller, and they move at a rate of a few centimeters to a few meters per day. But both of these types of glaciers are going to be moving. Even if it's not a lot, there will still be movement. So these glaciers form different types of landforms as well. The very first is called a horn, and it's a pointy-shaped mountain peak that is created when glaciers carve away the side of a mountain. Next, there is a cirque, and they are a bowl-shaped hollow landform caused by erosion. And finally, glaciers also create fjords, and that is a U-shaped valley created when the sea levels rise and fill a valley cut by a glacier. Your textbook also wants to remind you that wind can help shape the Earth's surface. So as we learned last week, the physical weathering that occurs by abrasion can smooth and polish rock. There's also a type of wind erosion called deflation, and this happens as particles are removed from the land and the surface gets lower and rockier. And this can be known as a desert gravel. So if you guys have ever seen a balloon deflate, it'll get lower and lower and lower. And the same thing happens with wind erosion or deflation. There are also two different types of dunes, which we learned about in the first lesson. There are desert dunes, and then there are also beach dunes. Many of you have probably seen beach dunes if you live in Puerto Rico or in the coast on North Carolina or South Carolina, or maybe you've traveled to the beach and you've seen these beach dunes. And beach dunes are important because they protect the coastline. When you guys get to the end of your lesson, it's really important that you go over to Talk Like a Scientist because it gives you all of the definitions that were in our lesson this week. So don't forget to add them to your guided notes to help you prepare for the module exam. This week, we are doing an activity, and that's going to be in a separate video, so you can go over there.